Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here on a hot take. What do you get when you defund the police? Well, Seattle's going to find out. Seattle moves to disband the police department and replace it with gender affirming anti racist Department of Community of Safety. Doesn't that sound nice? Doesn't that sound nice, Joan? No police. Um, this is being reported by Christopher F. Rufo off Twitter, posting some of the city council's proposal. They want to abolish the entire police force and replace it with nonprofit programs and community led activities. In the proposed legislation, the council argues that the SPD perpetuates racism, violence, and upholds white supremacy culture. The proposed department would be a menagerie, according to the article, of civilian led initiatives that would receive taxpayer funding, provided they are including culturally relevant expertise rooted in community connections and support, well versed in de escalation skills and mental health support, including trauma informed, gender affirming, anti racist praxis connected to resources like housing, food security, and other basic needs with wraparound services and long term support, committed to hiring and retaining staff who are from the communities they serve and lived experience of criminalization. So, in other words, you want a civilian led initiative that is staffed with local people who have been to jail, who have access to resources so they could house, give food and other basic needs, and support people long term, have trauma informed, gender affirming, anti racist praxis, de escalation skills, mental health, and culturally relevant expertise rooted in the community connections and support. You know what's missing from all this? How are you going to protect people? If someone's being robbed, how is any of this going to help? Are you going to say to the Ramas, "Oh, we'd like to de-escalate things now and have a dialogue with you about race and gender, and maybe we could find a nice housing unit for you and provide you with food security and other basic needs so you don't have to rob people"? Is that going to work? The robbers are going to stick around for that. The robbers will probably be people who already have free housing and food. They're poor. And you don't understand, City Council of Seattle. There are criminals that exist in the world. These criminals do not care about any of your rules and any of your woke nonsense. The council policy also calls on the city to support the immediate transfer of underutilized public land for Black, Indigenous people of color community ownership. Yeah, you know what that means? It means you're going to have some kind of commune type situation with I don't know, maybe an apartment building that's owned by the community and then maybe given to the people. And it's going to be a gutted, graffiti filled nightmare because it will be drug infested, because the drug gangs will not stop. They're not going to stop for any of this. You know what they stop for? Cops with guns. Cops who will arrest them. You're not going to arrest anyone with this. This nonsense of getting rid of the police is like an open invitation for every major organization on the West Coast to come to Seattle and take it over. And they'll fight over it too. They'll fight over it. They'll deal drugs. They'll fight over territory. You'll have bodies in the street. It will turn Seattle into a shooting gallery, an unlivable shooting gallery. You'll see the removal of every major company in Seattle. They will leave. It's already started. Anyone with money will leave Seattle immediately. And the people who hang on, they'll slowly be ground down. They'll also be blackmailed if they're not outright killed and robbed for whatever little they have left. And what you'll have is a city that will make Gotham City in the Batman comics look like a vacation by comparison. The city will absolutely crumble under this. And the woke idiots who attempt to initiate this stuff will be overwhelmed with calls. Literally overwhelmed. Like the phones will just be constantly ringing, and they'll be attempting to, you know, de-escalate all these situations, but it won't go anywhere. Because you can't de-escalate a situation where someone's pointing a gun in your face and screaming at you. There'll be no security, so many of these woke idiots will show up to a, you know, gutted, crime-ridden apartment complex, and they'll be killed, assaulted, possibly sexually, and what are they going to do about that? You're gonna strap on guns, social workers of Seattle, and then go into a place? Your woke nonsense doesn't support that. This will go on until the city council itself is killed, robbed, injured, and that'll come too. It'll be so bad that they'll actually run out of places to rob and then they'll go right for the city council members, assuming they don't do what the Minneapolis city council did, which is immediately hire private security, which they will need 24/7 in this new city. And anybody with money will leave. And that's not white flight. People aren't stupid. Anyone with money and the means will leave Seattle. They'll sell their business, get what they can for it, and get the hell out. And I would advise that for anyone living in Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis. If you haven't sold by now, your price ain't gonna go any higher. Get out now. Because, I guess if you're in, maybe you wait until the election and see if things could be turned around when Trump's reelected. Maybe all this woke BS will go away and they'll be forced to bring the cops back. I don't know if Trump can even do that. I don't know if he would. I mean, he can't stop the Minneapolis people from doing it. They seem to be far along with that. I don't think the federal government are going to intervene until it's so bad that either the city council itself has to ask the federal government, please come in here and save us, or the city council's like murdered, which I'm not kidding. These gangs are ruthless. Look, I did 2 years of research on organized crime for not just the mafia, but all sorts of groups. And there are West Coast gangs of different ethnic groups. It's mostly divided by ethnic groups. And they're ruthless. Now, some of the gangs, like the Yakuza, they don't tend to do street stuff. They are more like real estate based. They do high end stuff because they got lots of money and they're out of Japan. They tend to stay in Japan and then, they'll do stuff overseas. But they're like businessmen. The rest of the families, they are not like businessmen. And that's not to say the Yakuza aren't scary guys, and they have scary guys. I'm not, no disrespect, but let me tell you something. For the Yakuza, Seattle wouldn't be even worth their time. But for some of the other gangs, especially some of the smaller gangs, that, they'll come in there, they'll sell drugs, they'll bring machine guns, and as many guys as they can. And when they see there are no cops and no one to defend anybody, and they have a carte blanche to operate, you'll have the drug problem will spike. And all these Antifa idiots, the ones that aren't killed, the ones that aren't forced to move with their parents, will be drug addicts or forced into prostitution, or both. It'll be an absolute nightmare. It'll make prohibition in Chicago look like nothing. They'll obliterate the city. They'll own it as long as you let them. And then at some point, you'll force the federal government to come in and just send the army, the National Guard. They'll come in and go block by block, and they'll have to retake it all and arrest, hundreds of people. But the depravity here, or the potential for human depravity, is enormous. And these Marxist woke woke tards, uh, they don't know what they don't understand the can of worms they're opening up. First off, all the money will be gone. It will either be stolen or be pissed away on these programs, which will not work. It doesn't matter how much money you give to people, the gangs will control everything because they are the ones with the guns. And you won't be able to protect anyone, including yourselves. And if you're not forced to move or don't wake up and get out of the city, then you'll be one of its casualties. Because you'll just get in the way one day and they'll get annoyed and kill you. Or worse. Anybody with a lick of sense will flee the city. You won't be able to hire cops when you do decide, oh, we've made a terrible mistake. No one's going to want to work for you. The outlying communities and Washington State, if they continue to put up with this, would have to pour money into Seattle. Just pour money. Because they'll be asking for money every year. Because they'll just lose it. People will be stealing it with both hands. The schools will be an absolute wreck. They won't be able to protect the schools. You won't be able to protect children. There will be crime and drugs literally everywhere. It will be as if there are no laws with no cops. None of this woke BS will work without the power of the state behind you and the guns to back it up. You're taking all that away. You'll be lucky if you're not killed. It'll just be a matter of time before one of the gangs figures out, oh yeah, we could take this city. And you already have gangs there that are probably waiting in the wings. They're in the worst section of Seattle and they're just waiting. And they're probably expanding now, trying to recruit guys. That will be an expanding business. Some of these Antifa guys will end up joining because they won't have any work. There'll be no work. All the businesses will flee. All the people with money, all the capable people will flee. And the city will burn daily. You won't be able to keep the fire department staffed. They'll all leave too. Why the hell would I stay in a fire department where I could get shot at? There'll be no fire department, no cops, no EMTs will go anywhere. You won't be able to protect them. They'll leave too. The doctors will start to leave. You'll have a handful that'll stay and try to do the noble thing, and maybe they're so woke they don't see it, but it'll be this slow disintegration over a period of months. And then you'll have to put your hand out to the state and say, oh, all our wonderful programs, we don't have any more money, and all our tax base left, give us money. And Washington State may or may not give you money. It'll depend on, likely, maybe not. And that'll keep the Marxists in power for a while because there'll be nobody left to vote them out. So, if you're in Seattle, I highly advise you to leave. Seriously. Get the hell out of Portland. Get the hell out of Seattle and Minneapolis. Get out of the city now. While you still can get a decent amount of money for your business and property.